This is the Westminster Standard Podcast. I'm Ryan Beasy. Welcome. Today we are joined by the moderator of the 53rd General Assembly, Ruling Elder Melton Duncan, and the star of the show, Jackson Lynn, Teaching Elder Jackson Lynn. Welcome to you both.
Good to be with you, Ryan. Always a delight, and a delight to be with the PCA's newest superstar, Teaching Elder Lynn, and a delight to meet you in person. It was certainly a delight to call on you at Assembly last week.
Well, thank you for giving me a chance to speak and to have fellowship with the brothers.
Indeed.
And it did a superb job. I meant to come up and just want to say thank you for your patience and your care for the brothers.
Well, I appreciate that, Jackson. The Lord was kind to the PCA last week, and it's a wonderful denomination to be a part of. And I thought a lot of good was achieved, and we certainly had some challenges last week. I look forward to talking about all those things on the podcast with you and Ryan today.
Yeah, let's talk about that. How did you prepare? When it was suggested that you stand for moderator. Obviously, someone said at one point you seem like you've been preparing since birth, maybe.
Yeah.
Are you an 8th or 9th generation Presbyterian?
Yeah.
So
well, of course, I did what everyone does, Ryan. I watched the Westminster Standard podcast. Is what every good PCA teaching and ruling elder should do. Roy Taylor famously said that the PCA's rules are a tapestry. And so you've got to familiarize yourself with the rules. And anyone who's been to a General Assembly or a Presbytery meeting or even a session meeting knows that you've got to know your Roberts rules. You've got to learn your basic construct of how to make a motion and what are the basic motions and what are the basic rules of parliamentary debate. And within the PCA, in addition to Robert's rules at the GA level, a lot of folks don't realize that behind your BCO rules, there's this wonderful kind of yellow and goldenrod section called the Rules of Assembly Operation. And they actually govern the majority of what we do at General Assembly. And those vital rules I just read over and over again in the month leading up to GA. And so I try to do that. I'm a presbytery clerk, Ryan. I know you've served as a clerk, and I have found just having those kind of rumbling around in my mind are helpful to me because I knew that in a lot of ways it really didn't matter what I thought about the things going on at Assembly. It's the job of a moderator to just kind of call balls and strikes and to disassociate yourself from the personalities and even the debate itself, but just to try to get the train on the tracks and try to help people be able to formulate debate. And so that's what I did. I reminded myself of the rules. Obviously, when the docket popped up, I read through the docket twice. I thought some of our committees, particularly the M&A report, I thought was it was eye-opening. And they really put a lot in there. And so I just did my best to be as prepared as I could be to know what would happen at GA. And so I took advantage of the share file. I reminded myself of all those things that were available. And then I watched what you put out in terms of content to try to learn, okay, what are the issues? I watched some podcasts and some blogs maybe that are on the other side of the house, so to speak, so that I could at least hear what are the arguments out there that I'm going to hear at GA so that they would not be completely new to me because I wanted to understand. And then I kind of got in my mind that I'm the Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson Airport, and my job is to land a lot of planes and get a lot of people in and a lot of people out, and just sort of get ready for the week.
And you were fair. I mean, there was one moment that it was during the nominating committee report, and you were a floor nominee last year. I think somebody got up to make a point of order that he's making a speech, and actually this is the the chairman
It's
to make
his
a speech
job to
in favor. Yeah.
advocate for the committee. And I was reminded not to refer to them as the majority. They are the committee
Committee.
nominees. And so I had to remind the brother, no, that's his job to. And Ryan, you and I probably have been on both sides of that. And that's hard when you're the floor nominee and you don't win, and I've been on both sides of that. And so I tried to bring the sensitivity to both of those. You want to moderate with the golden rule, and sometimes you get to gavel in somebody that you both love and like, and then sometimes you have to call it the other way for people that you both love and like.
Yes, but the fairness just was one of the highlights of this assembly. What were your thoughts when you learned? I love Jay Nykirk.
Yeah,
he was my mentor, overseer. The guy
Yeah.
Presbytery assigned to shepherd
Yeah.
me through seminary as a candidate, and
Yeah.
another conservative confessional guy.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts going up against Dr. Nykirk?
Yeah, I saw where you had mentioned that on your show and in your writings, and I've served with Jay on SJC, and of course my first thought was, well, Jay's a better man than me, and this is going to be a good assembly, whatever way this goes. My first thought was the Lord's will be done in this. I was privileged to sit by my pastor, and I was glad to have my pastor with me when this election went down, and was honored for him to nominate me. And Ryan, I've done this before, and the time I did this before, it didn't go the way I wanted it to go, and so I was just so thankful to the Lord. The Lord took away the first time this happened, and the Lord blessed me this time it happened. And so blessed be the name of the Lord was literally what went through my mind as I was walking down towards the platform. So,
yes. And I hope we see Jay Nykirk nominated again.
as do I.
In about 24 months. So
Yeah, indeed.
that'd be good. Well, give us some update on this Clickergate. Jackson, were you able to vote at all this year? Or
I had to, yeah. I had to switch out my click twice.
wow.
The lady would just keep assuring me, "Hey, just wait a little bit." I was like, "Ma'am, I was not able to vote in the last two, so I would just have to try a new one." But I was each time when she gave me a new one, it worked.
Okay.
So,
and Jackson, did it change? Like, did you switch it each day, or how did that work when you would go up there?
Tuesday I switched the very beginning when they were testing it, and then Thursday I switched. So Tuesday and Wednesday were fine. So I wonder when we moved the receiver, if the resetting changed something to it.
Yeah. So I had resolved as moderator that I would just not vote, because I thought the moderator is really not supposed to vote in these things. But during the test vote, I got nervous because my device didn't work. And that was when I realized, Houston, we have a problem. And I guess the first thing I want to say is, and I'm a member of the Committee on Administration, and it's the Monday after GA. I don't know, Ryan, when you're going to broadcast, but the Permanent Committee on Administration is already all over this. And I could not, just in terms of someone in the position of trying to moderate a difficult situation, the AC staff was spectacular in terms of trying to give me options and trying to give me information to help the assembly. There were at least three things that the staff and the vendors told me as I was moderating the meeting. One is that it was a bad haul for those particular devices, and they said it could have been the material in the hall, the kind of device we were using, that the technology and the hall just didn't jive together. A second thing was, and you may have noticed that I made this announcement several times. There was an issue with hotspots interfering with the votes. And now, Ryan, you're a BCO wizard, and you know that we're big on ministering and declaring. We're not a denomination that goes out there and tells people what they can do with their property, and we can't demand people's phones and this and that. So you may have heard me at different times, at different levels, kind of petition people, will you please turn your hotspot off? At one point, one of my daughters said that was the way you talk to daughter number two, not the way you talk to daughter number one, and suggested that I needed to use the daughter number one voice on a matter. And so I tried different levels of menacing, and I tried the CIA scare voice and all that. But I'm told by the vendors that there was an issue with some hotspots towards the front of the room that were interfering with the tower receptors, and that's what the vendor told me. I would assume they would know better than me on that. The other thing they told me was that that it was a delicate system. You once your device synced up, when you would hit the button, there was a period of time between hitting the button and 1, 2, or 3, and then getting I think you called it the search for OK. I think you called it. There was a few seconds before OK would happen, and if a commissioner would hit the button and it would get 1, or it would get 2, or it would get 3. I hope you saw how I really tried to serve the abstain people out there. I know everybody, kind of digs on the abstain people, but I really was trying to help the abstainers out there. Apparently, when people wouldn't get OK, they would just hit their clicker again. And so I was told by the vendor, the typical person was hitting their device 20, 30, 40 times. And so if there were 2,000 people in the hall, that would mean there were 30, 40, 50,000 clicks, and it was just overwhelming the system. And it was sort of a nightmare, perfect storm kind of. It was Clickergate. And I'm not really sure what the AC staff could have done different. I mean, maybe there's a technology fix out there. I'm quite sure we're going to look for that.
Yeah.
But the great thing about it is that people really had a great attitude about it. They certainly bared with me. I mean, at times, I think the assembly was frustrated with my direction. I was certainly frustrated with the situation. I did my very best to be patient with it and to try to work the problem as best as I could. God bless our floor clerks running around counting votes. One of the questions I got was, Mel, why didn't you just go to floor clerks for every vote? And the answer was, we timed it, and it would have taken 3 times as long to do a floor clerk vote as to do a device vote, as long as it took to do a device vote. So we just didn't have good options, Ryan. And I was just, I was just so proud of the PCA in a really weird, kind of awkward situation. Everybody did their best. And I think we got the results that we were supposed to get. It just took us a circuitous way to get there.
And we had the best Wi-Fi that we've ever had, I think.
I agree with you on that. I had superb. I've never had good Wi-Fi at a GA like we did in Louisville this week.
Yeah, and I was able to download. Last year there were pleadings. Please stop.
Yeah.
Please turn everything off.
Yeah.
Just use it for the PDFs.
Yeah.
I was able to download the previous day's videos.
Downloads, yeah, and the videos too.
Great.
Yeah.
And I monitored, is this, and it didn't seem like it was hogging the bandwidth, so I just kept going. I was trying to be a good neighbor occasionally.
Yeah.
But why people asked, and I think there were a couple of points of order, why is it only the yes votes able to vote now, only the no votes?
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind that? I think, you're just trying out different
We were trying out different things. I worked for an old Army officer, and he had all these. He's taught me all these maxims, and you plan to work, and then you work the plan. And so we were trying different things. The Meridia people had come up to us and said, "Why don't you stagger the voting so that the yes folks are voting at one point, and then the no and abstain people are voting at another point?" And then one brother came up to us and they had a concern that, well, you might actually prejudice the vote if you favor the yeses over the nos based on which you do first. You might actually be showing the hand to the assembly. And so then we had the idea maybe we could do it at different times, and they're actually different votes. And the assembly did not like that at all. So we were doing the best we could, and I think eventually they moved the towers around, and I think overall the performance of the units worked better. We still had brothers in the very back of the hall. Fred Greco was actually the one that figured out that devices were actually tethered to particular towers. And then we had the spectacle of people figuring out that, actually I'm on the right side of the hall and my tower is on the other. And so you have the wandering around the hall thing.
I loved how you described that, the wilderness wandering and the tribes.
Right. I probably got a little too clever with that, but I was trying to have fun with it and to try to give some hope to some people. But, yeah, we did the best we could. And again, I want to thank there were a lot of people who were doing their best to try to come up with a solution, and we got through it, is what I would say about that.
And, in terms of acts and deliverances, this assembly accomplished a great deal. And got out before dinner. I was hopeful we'd be able to recess at 1:00 for lunch and be done. But I think the voting situation was not on the table, so to speak. But from your perspective, what are some of the success stories of this GA?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously Jackson was the success story. Jackson Lynn, what a wonderful young man this is. Jackson, tell us a little bit about your passion and your love for your country, and why did you want to speak on that particular resolution? I'm curious to know about that.
Well, I will be honest. At first, I was not inclined to vote for that overtures. I think there's other overtures that are similar. But what really got me to eventually change my mind was the language change, that we're giving thanks to the Lord. And I'm all for that. And I think some may have taken this as a patriotic speech, or I've seen some commentators say that this is a unnecessary expression of patriotism. They may have misunderstood me. I am a patriot. I do love this country. I have a deep love for this country because of men like you, brothers like you, who have loved me and taught me so well, have embraced me so well. But what ultimately this is about, the takeaway should be about, we need to be a denomination. We are a denomination that confess there's a special grace and common grace. It's okay for us to recognize common grace. And I think since I come into the PCA, even before I was a minister, it was just a season of having a good habit of repenting of the sin of our nation. And we always want to lead a charge in that. But then when it comes to rejoicing, which the scripture also commands us to do, and Paul multiple times says rejoice, again I said rejoice, that somehow it should be shunned upon or be called as patriotism. If that's patriotism, then repenting of the sins should be called as committing treason. It's not.
Yeah.
And so I think, I think it's granted, perhaps part of it is just my passion, my love for this country has kind of distracted the attention. But that's why eventually I did want to lead into, hey, this is ultimately about worship. It's okay to repent. It's okay for us to rejoice. and what is proper worship. This whole assembly, we actually are dealing with worship, the topic of worship a lot. Image of Christ, the directory for worship, what should be allowed in the sanctuary, and I mentioned the flag shouldn't be allowed. And I saw someone accuse me of being a Kellerite. So on both sides, they're saying I'm not patriotic enough, and someone says I'm too patriotic, and I don't even know what the word Kellerite means. But I have an assumption that if they heard that, they'll be like, "No, we disagree with Jackson's speech."
Jackson, when I got home, one of the best conversations I had with one of my children was about flags in the sanctuary. And it actually led to a fascinating kind of dad-daughter, just what are we doing in church kind of discussion. And it was all because of your speech. And what I heard was somebody who loved the Lord and loved the providence of the Lord in his own life. I had some brothers who fussed at me for not your speech, but for letting the applause happen after the speech. And I'm committed to the court and the rules of the court. You may remember that I commended your speech without prejudice, yay or nay, for the speech, because what I thought was a genuine expression of love. And I thought it was remarkable what you did. And I don't know you really well, but I loved what you did there. And well, I'm going to say it now. I really loved what you said there. And I think it's a reflection of your love for the Lord and the ministry and your involvement in the church. And I think that's irrespective of all the other isms going on in the PCA right now. It's just a celebration of the glory of God and his providence and, whatever else is going on in the PCA, can we not just celebrate God's goodness and providence and bringing the PCA together? And that's what I heard in your speech right there.
And I want the brothers to know, like, there are people that are thankful for your love towards people like me. That makes this country. You are one of the reasons that make this country good, even though we may disagree on different issues. That I love this country. I do care about the people here, the brothers here, and I do love cheeseburger. So part of it's about cheeseburger. But I do want to and I have reached out to the brother that spoke at first, and I did feel like part of my speech. I actually agree with him on the issues of having flags in the sanctuary. I agree. I think many that don't understand that. I agree on the regulative principle of worship. People that outside of Presbyterian circles, they don't understand that. I do feel like as I was agreeing with him and making my points, I feel like I was mocking him. And I do want to apologize to a brother for that. And but I'm thankful that you allow me to speak, and I'm just thankful for the PCA. And
well, in the providence of God, I was a little tired, and I happened to catch my friend Ryan Beasy out of the corner of my eyes, and I trusted Ryan, and I went to you, and it all worked out for kind of a magic moment. So that was neat to be that we're all connected together in that moment, for sure.
It was a great time, and I think it helps us as a denomination to remember that the spirituality of the church does not mean that you cannot acknowledge the magistrate or God's providence, that we live in a land where we can dwell peacefully, quietly, godly, in a dignified way, and we should thank God that we have such a magistrate.
Amen.
I think I saw something on Facebook that took place in the town where you are, Mel, and with a certain senator, and I think that was exactly what the Brother Krulish was concerned would happen, which is not what this overture was doing, and I hope that no one takes it that way. That was a great success to have a measured just gratitude to God, recognizing that this republic has stood for 250 years.
Good prayer else, too.
Well done calling on Zach Groff to pray for that.
Zach did a good job. I didn't see the eagle on his shoulder in the hall, but somehow that materialized, apparently, according to AI. So there were some technical things that happened this GA that honestly I hope they become features of future GAs. Steve Tipton did a great job with RPR. I mean, RPR is always a very technical thing. Westminster Standard podcast listeners are savvy, polity people, but you know that the RPR portion of GA is actually under Robert's rules, so anything can happen in an RPR report. It's much more broad in terms of motions and things that can happen. So I was actually, if GA is a roller coaster, RPR is the first part of the roller coaster that you're going the highest on. And I actually said to my wife, if I can make it through the RPR report, I might just make it through GA, because from a moderator standpoint, it's more complicated. But what Steve did is he gave us an overview and he put it in the share file a day or two ahead of time. So anybody who wanted to know could kind of see the map of where he was going. And I think that actually kind of ameliorated the problem of recent years in which we spent a lot of time just arguing about what are we doing before we argued, and I mean that in the proper sense of the word, before we argued about the report. And I just found that very helpful. And then Guy Waters did a version of that with overtures. You may have noticed that we had 90-something overtures to work through this year, and somebody cleverly called it the Novertures General Assembly. I think that might have been you, Ryan.
That might have been Isbell, maybe.
Yeah, maybe Isbell did. Well, let's not give Brad too much credit, Ryan. But I thought those features were really helpful, and I hope future chairmen do that, because, a lot of us who participate in this want to know, it's almost like knowing what pitch is coming, and it just helps us get ready for it. Ryan, you've done some work on the M&A issues the last couple of years. I thought we've done a very good job of turning the page on M&A without any criticism about what's gone before. This was a General Assembly where we just started, plowing the ground on what needs to happen going forward. And I felt like, I know that the different committees involved in oversight, but also in proactivity, have done a good job with that. So I was thrilled with that. I actually spoke with Steve Dowling this morning. Can we just stop and say Steve Dowling is a national treasure? I don't want to embarrass him, but this brother is working for free, a full-time job. And this is an esteemed businessman who just dropped everything to help the church. And John Bice is like this too. I mean, John Bice is a treasure for the PCA, and let's hear it for some ruling elders who are stepping up and really helping the church out.
I love Steve's report, where just hear all the good things that are happening at Missions North America, and he ran out of time. That was that was precious.
And I actually warned him beforehand. I said, Steve, don't make me cut you off ahead of time. But yeah, it was such a good report. How could you? And I gave him a little extra time too. But I love Steve Dowling. The other thing I want to say is Matt Bradley. I had no idea how important Matt Bradley was to the work of General Assembly. Matt is the timekeeper, but he's also the guy who keeps track of who's at what mic. And I literally, he was amazing. Love Matt Bradley. Those were some things that come to mind that I want to mention.
Yes, and just to what I noticed this year, maybe it had happened in previous years, but even chairmen and coordinators' mics were cut off when they were out of time. I appreciated that. We have a docket. I mean, I remember one assembly, somebody's rambling on about different types of cuisine, and it's we got business. And
so I tried to tell all of them, I'm gonna cut it off. I mean, we're all under the same rules, and I tried to apply that fairly to everybody. So
yes, and on the subject of rules, there was there was Darth Inquisitor there calling the question. Thoughts on that? Did you know that was sort of a curveball of day one?
I have no problem with a brother calling the question. He has every right to do that, and God bless him. He has a point of view, and he wants a quicker assembly. And I don't know that gentleman. I look forward to getting to know him. We face friended one another today, and I'm sure we're going to have lots of laughs down the road. He wants a quicker assembly. I want a more deliberative assembly. And so he was trying to finesse his point of view. I was trying to finesse my point of view. And we kind of met in the middle on that, is what I would say. And I liked that guy, the guy behind him, the apparition behind him in the online things. I'm not so sure about that, but yeah, I mean, everybody has their different tolerance level. But my sense was, and Ryan, you've called the question a few times pretty quickly on some things.
I did this assembly, and
you did this assembly, but I tried to rule consistently. I tried to, and you helped me with this. When there are brothers at the microphone who have not been heard, I tried to consistently apply that principle that, if there are brothers who have patiently waited in line. I was so glad that I think it was Terry Carnes made one of the great speeches of the assembly. He patiently had to wait through some back and forth until he had a shot. I left my own brother at the mic one time because time ran out. And sometimes that just happens, in GA debate. But my sense was with the brother at microphone 5 that the assembly wanted more debate than we had given it. And of course, anyone can challenge the chair. But that was my sense at the time on that.
And on the subject of deliberative assembly, this, Jackson, I know this was your 4th assembly. This seemed to have been the most, ironically, the most deliberative assembly that we've had, where it seemed like men's minds were changed actually by debate. There was the BCO ratification on Tuesday night, where one guy spoke against it. It had passed like 90% of the presbyteries. Yeah. He speaks against it. Nobody speaks for it. It fails. Same with Ruling Elder Lee's speech against increased ruling elder fees. It initially failed, but people changed their mind when John Bice spoke to it upon reconsideration. So, Jackson, do you recall? You may have a fresher memory because you've only seen 4 of them, but
yeah.
Do you recall any more deliberative assembly than this one?
I just want to first go back to what Bill Duncan said about Steve Dolan. He's not a reason why I love this country. He served the temporal kingdom well. He could have just retired, but he continues to go on and serve the eternal kingdom. And the PCA, he's one reason why I love this denomination. And when I spoke last year, he and I connected because he served in the Marine. I served in the Taiwanese Marine in the past, and so I'm very thankful for his service. But as to your question on the delinquency, I never have gone. I got here like 4 years ago. GA in Memphis. That was my first GA, and so I never gone through like the whole revoice debate. However, when I walked in, I think one of the biggest debate was on having atheists in the court. And even then, I saw improvement in how we address the brothers, how we persuade the brothers of the other side. There was way less emotional manipulations. There's way less false accusations of the other side. Rather, brothers are really opening up their Bible. I think more and more each time I see brothers opening up their Bible, arguing from scriptures, and calling for unity in truth together. And so I'm very thankful for that. And in moments like this, you see the God's word is living indeed, where the old presbytery may all agree a brother with the scripture at the mic can persuade the assembly. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful to see that. I'm thankful to see scriptures being quoted more and more, and there are debates. It's certain that I wish there was more debates on certain issues. I'm flattered when I saw protesters said that my speech was the best speech of the PCA. I was flattered, but I was also a little worried. I feel like more should have been debated. I'm thankful that there are things that are being clearly communicated on the floor.
Johnson, one of the reasons I'm excited about doing this podcast with you is that I think there is a certain kind of, the AI algorithm is going to grab your speech and they're going to try to make Jackson into a certain kind of online personality that you're really not that kind of person. You're actually a very thoughtful, godly Presbyterian minister. And I'm so glad we're able to have this conversation here because what you did was funny, but who you are is actually a very profound, godly minister. And what you did was actually pointing to a much more profound truth that the PCA needed to hear. And I'm very grateful for that. And I got into Louisville a little early last week, and I was able to connect with my friend Al Moeller at Southern Seminary, and we were talking about the Southern Baptist Convention a few weeks ago. And he likes to talk about the Southern Baptist Convention being the world's largest town hall. And there are a lot of emotional, what would we call them, sort of pathos type speeches there that are not as deliberative, let's just say, as we would want them to be. I think PCA speeches, just like what Jackson is saying, are getting better and better. And I think particularly, and Ryan, you have hammered this better than anybody in the PCA, I think Revoice has actually caused our denomination to completely, not completely, but has made us better in the sense that I think the broad middle of the PCA has realized we're never going to let this happen again. And I think that the broad middle of the PCA and the conservative of the PCA are having a conversation with one another that has made the PCA become more confessional and conservative. I think our denominational assemblies have become more deliberative. I think even our worship services have been a little bit better. I think we always have to remember that our worship services are going to reflect the presbyteries that the GA are held in. And so we need to be careful with our aspirations. We're guests in a presbytery's home, and we need to be very careful about not projecting our own styles and standards on that. If I go to a PCA church across town and go to their worship service, I'm going to remember I'm a guest. I'm not going to project my own church's standard on them. But at the same time, I don't want to be completely over the top. But I'm actually just thrilled with the direction of everything. I think PCA General Assemblies have been on a consistent pattern of being more robust in terms of debate and in a better direction in terms of confessional commitment.
Absolutely. It's just amazing what has happened in the last 8 years. And I think the seminaries are doing a better job. I think Guy Waters is doing a great job preparing men with his how Jesus runs the church and well-ordered living well. There's a whole Polity Matters podcast now. And I appreciated you quoting from that article that By Faith did about how should you debate? And I wondered, there was a comment in there about not going to the mic too much, and I wondered, is he talking about me?
No.
Well, then your pastor crept up behind me and said, "Hey, why don't you think about this?" And I said, "Hey, why don't you say that?" And so I was thankful that he could say that rather than me saying it. But what are some things that were overlooked? There's been a lot of talk about Jackson's speech. There's been a lot of talk about the failure to ordain women, which is a good thing. But there's some we delivered and we acted on a number of things that may not have gotten a lot of attention.
Well, let me give you one, and you may feel free to push back Ryan or Jackson on this. I don't want to presume this is your point of view. So one of the overtures that kind of slipped through, we thought this was going to be functional female officers. That was all we were going to talk about, and it ended up being that was not really. That was a big story. It wasn't the big story. One of the things that I'm particularly keen on discussing this coming year was Overture 27. Now, our dear friend Thomas Ricard from Westminster Presbytery, let's just have a moment of silence for Westminster Presbytery. He's unhappy. He's unhappy with us because that overture was, from his point of view, was radically changed, and it was. Anyone who's ever had their overture heavily amended, it's a hard process. I've had my overtures rewritten heavily, and it's a hard thing to do. But let me just say, the PCA needs a new BCO 34-1. This is the assumption of original jurisdiction overture. We need one for ministers, and we need one for sessions as well. And the issue is, there are two issues, and Howie, my good friend Howie Donahue, who I actually have spoken with several times since Tuesday night, and he is my good friend. The issue is there's a technical problem, and then there's a trust problem, and both sides of the house, so to speak, in the PCA have a part in trying to resolve this issue. The technical problem is this murky, amorphous expression in the BCO failure to act. Now, Ryan, how many times have you and I had a conversation, whether it's Revoice or the Federal Vision? Those are the big two items. So there have been some others where, to you and I, we have a certain kind of ontological certainty that there's an issue here. Why can't the church see it? And so we went to BCO 34-1, and we went to our sessions, and then we went to our presbyteries, and we made our case, and then the church said no. We just don't see there's been a failure to act. And then there have been cases like the Ryan Speck case. Ryan Speck, one of the great churchmen in the history of the PCA, stood alone, this man, in front of his presbytery. Stood alone in front of his presbytery, took it all the way to the SJC.
Not just
loved
once,
this, not twice. Just once, but twice. And when the annals are written, Ryan's name will be there. And part of the problem is the way the book is written. Failure to act is such an unclear standard to apply. The words need to be changed. And I say that as a former member of the Standing Judicial Commission. I wish I could say to you, this is what it means, but the SJC doesn't know what it means. It's just a simple act. And Howie will tell you that, and the man who wrote those words will tell you that, and the SJC as a whole will tell you that. So we need to change the words. But in order to change those words, there has to be, and Jackson, you're too young to hear this, so cover your ears. There's going to have to be a bargain made within the PCA. And that bargain is going to be, we're going to raise the level of trust, that we're not going to do this every time Mel says something that offends Ryan, so that 2 or 3 presbyteries can bring Mel up on charges or Ryan up on charges. Because goodness knows 2 or 3 presbyteries want to bring Mel and Ryan up on charges. So we've got to set a very high threshold so that everyone understands, if we make this clear, we're going to set a very high threshold to apply this. And so even within the Overtures Committee, there was an attempt to reduce 20% down to 10% and then to 15%. And there was a recognition, and it was because Howie and I together made the argument, and Fred Greco has previously made this argument. I believe Jay Nykirk has made this argument as well, that there has to be a very high level of trust in order to change this word. Now, I know that there are brothers who I love maybe who I'm even related to, who may disagree with that. But I'm convinced, having tried to fix this, and I'm going to say something. I believe this is almost like a Marbury versus Madison level of problem in the PCA. Jackson has said how that the Taiwanese Constitution is based upon the American Constitution. Well, everyone who's ever studied the Constitution knows that until we got Marbury versus Madison, we didn't have a way for the Supreme Court to properly judicially review our laws. And right now, until we can fix this, the assumption of original jurisdiction, we can't properly judge a matter on the merits before the SJC. So I'll stop with that. I think Overture 27 is a big deal, and I hope that the presbyteries give it a hard look and go for it this fall.
It certainly does. It obviously raises the bar from 2 or 3 to 20%.
17. Yeah.
Yes.
17.
Yes. Well, and maybe another one after January when Sean Morris, Smoky Mountain Presbytery, SMP, exists. But, if something is truly grievous and there has been no indictment and no one in that in the home presbytery is willing to complain against the presbytery's judgment, surely 18 presbyteries would be willing to petition for original jurisdiction. I'd love to get your thoughts on Overture 52. That was the one from Mississippi Valley on titles and ordination that was answered by reference to 37. There was a movement to pull it out, and someone, maybe on this podcast, moved the previous question, and 2/3 of the assembly agreed with him. But what practical effect would answering it by reference to 37 versus referring it back or recommitting it? What practical effect would that have on an overture?
Well, I've talked an awful lot. Jackson, do you want to weigh in on that? Did you have a strong feeling about the Mississippi Valley approach to the deaconess problem, so-called problem?
I did have a speech written for that. I was ready to go up to the mic, but I'd like to just kind of hear some of y'all's wiser men to kind of help me understand, why it should not have been debated, or why we probably should have pulled it out and debated more.
Well, I can rehearse for you the argument that I heard in overtures, which is we're kind of at a World War I Maginot Line place with overtures related to the functional female office bearing in the PCA. And yes, if you want to get another overture passed that kind of narrows the BCO, you could probably get that passed at GA, but it's unlikely to pass in the presbyteries. That's essentially the argument that's made. We're going to see with Jared and the Ascension Presbytery one about simply listing the diaconate. It's going to be interesting to see if that gets through. You remember at this past year, we couldn't even get an examination of officers by sessions with listing their differences with the confession. So the argument made at the Overtures Committee was that the Mississippi Valley overture was unlikely to be sustained by 2/3 of our presbytery. Now, that doesn't mean that it wasn't worth going for, but I think with the press of business, the Overtures Committee heard that argument and went for it. I was in a posture of moderating, so I didn't really have my boxing gloves on this year. And I guess I'll just leave it at that for now. So.
I did love that overture. And someone has asked me to send it up to my current presbytery, and so, well, I'll think about it, but I think the assembly may be tired of hearing from.
Well, as I said to Sean Morris just a couple of days ago online, too soon, Ryan, too soon. Give us a month, and then we can start smithing new overtures. So,
well, my poor clerk has already received an overture for next year, and he's an amazing man.
Well, I think some of the desire of other men is that they want to strengthen the BCO. And do you think it would have helped if we refer 52 to the answer on the overtures that says with a record session and the diaconate's name?
Yeah, I mean, yes is the answer to that, Jackson. I think we need to see if that makes it through the process. Jackson, when I talk with my friends on the other side of the PCA, and I say to them, we need to narrow the book and we need to tighten up these rules. Typically what they say to me is, Mel, usually they'll say, bless your heart for saying that. And then they'll say, no, what you need to do is you need to make a judicial case on this. You need to show me a case where what we're doing is wrong, and that needs to be proven wrong in the courts of the PCA. And that's typically how, when I have conversations with my brothers in the PCA who disagree with me wildly, that's typically how it goes. So for what it's worth, that's what that looks like.
Well, what about RPR? This year, the Assembly sustained an exception of substance for a presbytery failing to, it sounds like, accede to a 40-5 related to a session. Is that significant? That may have been overlooked.
I think it is. I mean, RPR, we recognize that as judicial or kind of proto-judicial activity. I know David Coffin likes to call it administrative oversight, but to me, that's a good sign. I mean, our RPR is, to me, let me make a Melism for you. To me, is like when your mama calls you out, is sort of like when RPR calls you out. And then judicial business is kind of like when your dad calls you out, I mean, so to me, there's a sense in which RPR has to have teeth. And when RPR is starting to note, and I think, look, let me not make light of it. I think we all recognize that there are churches in the PCA that are trying to do robust BCO 9.7s, and we can live with a version of that. I think a lot of PCA churches have done away with traditional women's ministry, and they want to do something with their women. I think the answer is you ought to have a traditional women's ministry where women are doing deeds of mercy and Christ-like deeds of good throughout the church. I don't know a single minister in the PCA who doesn't understand that women are at the heart of every meaningful, useful, godly church. I mean, if you don't understand that, you shouldn't be in ministry. But I think a lot of churches want to do something beyond that, and maybe they don't have a traditional women's ministry. But nevertheless, there's some of these churches that maybe have experimented with titles, and they're I want to be very careful here, but their women's ministry with these new titles, maybe they're doing things that elders should be doing. We need to be very careful on that, and those are, I think, proper things to be cited, and might be the course of judicial activity.
We'll see what comes from that. I'm curious because it's one General Assembly, and we'll see how Catawba Valley responds. So when you got home, what are some of the first things you did? You must have been exhausted. Is there a chair behind the podium, or are you standing for 60 hours at a time?
I asked them for a chair and for water. I said I need chair, water, and power was what I asked for. And at one point, some nice lady, I don't know who she was, brought me a cookie, and apparently I got nailed eating cookies up there too. But
you and Zach Bird want some cookies.
Yeah, me and Zach Bird needed cookies. Honestly, Ryan and Jackson, I don't really remember a whole lot this weekend. My wife told me that we went out on Saturday. I have no real memory of Saturday, but I had a wonderful time, reconnect. My kids were all in different places. My youngest daughter was on the high school beach trip with the church youth group, and it was real sweet. They had watched the election on Tuesday night and sent me a picture. That was really sweet. And my son's in DC this summer. And he had watched some things with the election and some of GA with buddies, and that was real fun. And then my middle daughter, who you would love, Ryan, she's my TR. She had watched most of GA and was actually texting me things that I needed to correct during GA that, Dad, you need to rule that guy out of order and that kind of thing. So I was paying very close attention to her throughout the week. But yeah, we sort of reconnected. And then after everybody went to bed Saturday night, I went out to the mailbox and checked my mail, and I had a thank you letter from the president and the first lady had sent me a congratulations note on being elected moderator. So that was pretty cool. So that's something that I'll probably hang up on the wall as long as Jackson says that doesn't violate some rule. I'll probably hang that up on the wall here at church at some point. But
you have to go to Hobby Lobby, get that mounted, and maybe put in the
that's exactly right. That's right. That's exactly what I'll do. So that was a really special way. It was kind of surreal, wow. I mean, so I saw the White House and I was like, whoa, what is this? So that was a really, really neat moment. So
that's wonderful. So you're moderator for a year, not just a week.
Yep.
So you've got some things left to do. You've got to sort out the voting situation.
Yep.
You've got to. We got one study committee that you're going to appoint. And
so there are 4 things that I've just on my list of things today that I've been working on, and we've already been I'm on the permanent committee for administration. So appreciative of the AC is already talking about the Clickergate and what to do for next year in Milwaukee. I've been talking. You may recall that we're changing our auditors for M&A, and this is just kind of a best practice. And one of these things, Ryan, when you go through a hard experiences, you learn a lot of best practices, and I think a lot of our PCA agencies and committees are thinking through maybe we should rotate our auditors. I think a lot of organizations have this as a best practice. So I'm working on developing a list of commission members who could help us find a new auditor. I need to develop an Overture 37 dissent response commission. And then I've received over 100 names for the AI study committee. And so I've set deadlines for all of these things, and I'm working through each of these things. I would covet your prayers. I got to say one thing I love about the PCA. It just kind of blows me away, Ryan. I probably had 500 people tell me they're praying for me. And I think one of the reasons and I'm not sure I did all that good of a job, but that I was able to do a halfway decent job was just God's people really helped, and very appreciative of all of that. And if I could, I just want to express my thanks to everyone who helped and prayed. Certainly the AC staff, but just regular old PCA people who gave me a shot in the arm throughout the week and let me cut in line here and there so I could get through the week a little and do my job. Really appreciate everybody.
And we appreciate you navigating the ship. That was some big swells, as they say. Yeah. Not sure who says that, but they do.
Yeah.
Well, Moderator Duncan, Jackson Lynn, thank you so much for your time and reflections on this assembly. It was a great one.
Thank you, man.
Thanks for joining the conversation on the Westminster Standard, which is the podcast of Jude 3. For more information or to support our work at promoting confessional renewal within the Presbyterian Church in America, please visit our website, jude3pca.org. Join us again next time. I'll talk to you then.